A freezing Chicago night swallowed the streets in white silence. Wind screamed between alleyways, biting through coats and gloves. Aaliyah, a 29-year-old black nurse, clutched her scarf tighter as she hurried home from her late shift until she saw it. A tiny figure curled against the gate of a mansion ahead, motionless, barefoot, blue-lipped. She froze. "Oh my God! Baby, can you hear me?" Her voice cracked through the storm. The child didn't answer, only snow piling higher around her. Aaliyah dropped her bag and sprinted forward, slipping on the ice, lungs burning from the cold. She tore off her thin coat and wrapped it around the shivering girl. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Please." The metal nameplate on the gate read the Reynolds Estate, gold letters blurred by frost. Lights glowed faintly inside. Someone had to be home. Aaliyah slammed both fists against the iron bars. "Hello, there's a little girl freezing out here. Please open the gate." No response. She pressed the intercom button. Static, a flicker of red light, then dead. She hit it again and again until her fingers bled. Across the street, a window curtain twitched. A woman's voice shouted through the glass, "Get away from that gate. We're calling the cops." "I'm not. Please. She's dying." Aaliyah begged. The light snapped off. Tears burned her eyes as she turned toward the street. Cars crawled past, none stopping. The cold bit into her skin until she couldn't feel her hands. "Come on, baby, wake up." She rubbed the girl's arms, her breath shallow and shaky. "What's your name, huh?" Through trembling lips came a whisper, almost lost in the wind. "Ella? That's it, Ella. You stay with me, okay? You're safe now." Aaliyah looked back at the locked gate. Wealth and warmth stood just a few feet away, yet so unreachable. Snow buried her shoes as she knelt beside Ella, rocking her gently to keep her blood moving. Minutes passed. No one came. Her knees throbbed, blood mixing with snow, but she didn't stop. She leaned close to the child's ear. "I'm not leaving you. Not tonight." If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. Snowflakes whipped through the dark as Aaliyah staggered down the empty street, clutching Ella against her chest. The child's skin was ice cold, her tiny fingers stiff. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on," Aaliyah whispered through chattering teeth. Her apartment was 4 blocks away, but every step felt like a mile. The storm roared louder, stealing her breath. Halfway there, her legs buckled. She hit the ground hard, knees scraping pavement. Pain shot through her body, but she refused to let go. Headlights flashed in the distance, a snowplow grinding down the lane. Aaliyah forced herself up and waved desperately. "Help! Please! There's a child!" The plow screeched to a halt. A middle-aged driver jumped out, shock flashing in his eyes. "Jesus, what happened?" "She's freezing, help me." Aaliyah gasped. He ripped off his jacket and wrapped it around them both, fumbling for his phone. "Hang on, lady. I'm calling 911. Within minutes, the street filled with red and blue lights. Paramedics lifted Ella onto a stretcher, wrapping her in heat blankets. One of them looked at Aaliyah. "You too, ma'am. You're barely conscious." "I'm fine," she muttered, even as her body trembled uncontrollably. "Just take care of her." The medic shook his head. "You're both going." As the ambulance sped toward Chicago Mercy Hospital, Aaliyah's vision blurred. She reached out, brushing Ella's small hand through the blankets. "You're safe now," she whispered before everything went dark. When she woke, fluorescent lights burned her eyes. A nurse leaned over. "You're at the hospital. You saved that little girl's life." Aaliyah blinked weakly. She's okay?" "She's in recovery. Hypothermia, but stable." The nurse smiled. "They're calling you a hero." Later that day, headlines exploded across social media. Black woman saves billionaire's daughter from blizzard. Nurse risks life for child left outside luxury mansion. The internet split in two, thousands praising her courage, others questioning her motives. One comment read, "Bet she was trying to get ransom money." Another, "This woman deserves the key to the city." Aaliyah lay in her hospital bed, scrolling through the chaos. She didn't care what they said, only that Ella was alive. Outside her window, the snow kept falling. Quiet, relentless, just like her. The next morning, the hospital hallways buzzed with reporters, flashing cameras, and whispers. But Aaliyah barely noticed. Her body ached, her chest heavy from pneumonia creeping in, yet her only thought was a little girl she'd carried through the storm. "Ella Reynolds," she whispered. "I just need to see her." The nurse shook her head gently. "Her father's here. He's asked for privacy." Aaliyah nodded, sinking back into the pillow. "Right, privacy." Her voice cracked. The rich always get that. Across the hall, billionaire Ryan Reynolds stood at his daughter's bedside, his tailored coat dusted with melted snow. Ella's tiny hand rested inside his, and 4-line taped to her wrist. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. The doctor's words kept echoing. If she'd been out there 15 more minutes, she wouldn't have made it. 15 minutes, the difference between life and death, between a stranger's courage and his own negligence. He replayed the security footage again on his phone. The grainy image of a black woman pounding on his gate, her coat wrapped around his child, her knees bloodied, her lips blue, still begging for someone to open the door. He couldn't look away. When the doctor left, Ryan stepped out of Ella's room, phone still shaking in his hand. "Where is she?" "The woman from the storm?" he asked the nurse at the desk. "She's in room 204, still weak but stable." He hesitated, then walked, each step heavier than the last. Inside, Aaliyah looked small under the thin hospital blanket. Her curls were matted from the snow, lips pale, breathing shallow. The monitor beeped softly beside her. Ryan stood in the doorway, unable to speak. Her eyelids fluttered. "You the doctor?" she murmured. He shook his head. "No, his voice caught. "I'm Ella's father." She blinked, trying to sit up. "She's okay?" He nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "She's alive because of you." Aaliyah smiled faintly. "That's all I wanted to hear." Ryan swallowed hard. "I should have been there." "Maybe," she whispered, her voice fading. "But someone was—" He looked down and saw the bandage on her hands, raw from pounding the gate. As she drifted back to sleep, she murmured a single name, "Jasmine." Ryan frowned softly. "Who's Jasmine?" But Aaliyah was gone again, slipping into exhausted silence. He stood by her bed, guilt carving deep lines into his face. The billionaire who had everything, saved by a woman who had nothing but heart. And for the first time in years, Ryan Reynolds bowed his head and prayed. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe. 2 days later, Aaliyah awoke to the soft hum of monitors and the faint scent of hospital coffee. Her chest burned with every breath. But her first thought was still the same. "Ella, where's Ella?" "She's okay," came a deep voice from the corner. Aaliyah turned her head. Ryan Reynolds stood near the window, still in the same dark suit, tie loosened, eyes red from sleeplessness. He stepped closer, his tone low and steady. "She's been asking for you." A small smile touched Aaliyah's lips. "Good. She's strong." Ryan hesitated before sitting down beside her bed. "I don't have the words," he said quietly. "You saved my daughter's life." Stop. Aaliyah interrupted softly. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do," he said, voice breaking. "You nearly died for her, and I was halfway across the country, too busy to pick up my phone." Aaliyah's gaze drifted to the window where flakes of snow still fell, gentler this time. "Life has a way of testing who we really are," she said. "You just didn't hear the test calling." Before Ryan could reply, the door opened. A man in a gray security uniform stepped in, hat clutched to his chest, his face pale, nervous. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here, Chad?" The guard swallowed hard. "Sir, I needed to apologize." He looked at Aaliyah. "I was the one on duty that night. I saw you on the camera feed. I should have opened the gate." "I didn't. I thought—" "You thought I was trouble," Aaliyah said quietly. Because I didn't look like I belonged there. Chad's eyes watered. I was wrong. I'll live with that forever. Ryan's jaw clenched. You will, but not without learning something. He turned toward the guard, voice steady and cold. From this day forward, there's a new rule for every property I own. If anyone asks for help, you open the damn gate. No excuses. Chad nodded, tears streaking his face. Yes, sir. He turned to Aaliyah. I'm sorry. Truly. She met his gaze, firm, not cruel. Then be better. Next time, don't wait for orders to act human. Ryan watched her, humbled. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met, he whispered. Aaliyah smiled weakly. I'm just tired of the cold. Outside, the storm had ended. Inside, something warmer had begun to rise, a quiet reckoning neither of them expected. Sunlight broke through the hospital blinds the next morning, painting thin golden lines across Aaliyah's face. The fever had eased, but weakness still tugged at her body. She stared at the small get-well card on her nightstand, a child's uneven handwriting in pink marker. Thank you for saving me. Love, Ella. Her lips curved into the softest smile. Moments later, the door creaked open. Ryan stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. The real kind, he said with a faint grin. Not that hospital stuff that tastes like punishment. Aaliyah chuckled softly. You came prepared. He sat beside her bed, handing her 1 cup. You'll be discharged today. The doctor said you'll need rest, no work, no cold, and definitely no heroics. Guess that's your polite way of saying I'm stubborn, she teased. He smirked, determined. I owe my daughter's life to that. She grew quiet, sipping the coffee. How's Ella? Drawing, singing, asking for you every hour, Ryan said. I was wondering, he hesitated. Would you consider staying at our guest house for a few weeks? It's quiet, warm. My staff can help you recover. Aaliyah blinked. You want me to live near your mansion? He nodded. Ella would love it. And honestly, I think I would too. Her first instinct was to refuse. Pride rose in her throat. The same pride that had carried her through every double shift and every empty Christmas. I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Ryan said gently. It's gratitude, and maybe a second chance for all of us. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Second chances are rare, she murmured. Then we shouldn't waste one, he said quietly. That afternoon, Ryan helped her into his car. The cold air stung her cheeks, but this time it didn't feel cruel. As they drove through the winding road to the Reynolds estate, Aaliyah's heart tightened. The same golden gate loomed ahead, the one that had once stayed shut. It opened slowly now, welcoming her in. Ella ran out from the porch, bundled in a pink coat, eyes bright. You came, she shouted, arms wide. Aaliyah laughed through tears. Of course I did, Snow Angel. Ryan stood behind them, watching the two hug beneath the soft winter light. The same storm that nearly took a life had brought 3 of them together. A week later, the snow had melted into thin silver puddles across the Reynolds estate. Inside the guest house, warmth replaced silence, laughter, crayons, and the smell of fresh pancakes. Aaliyah sat on the couch beside Ella, who was drawing 2 stick figures. One small with pigtails, one taller with curly hair, both wrapped in red hearts. That's us, Ella said proudly. You and me, the Snow Angels. Aaliyah smiled. You're getting good at this, kiddo. Daddy says you're my hero, Ella giggled. I told him he's wrong. You're everyone's. Aaliyah's laugh faded into a soft sigh. I'm just someone who didn't look away. Later that week, Ryan knocked on the door, holding a children's book, The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. Ella's school is doing a winter reading day, he said. They asked her to bring a guest reader. She picked you. Aaliyah blinked. Me! He nodded. She said her story wouldn't sound real unless she told it. 2 days later, Aaliyah sat in a small classroom surrounded by bright coats and louder voices. 20 little faces looked up at her as she opened the book. Once there was a little boy named Peter who loved the snow. Her voice flowed gently, rising and falling like the rhythm of memory. The children leaned closer as she read, their eyes wide, their smiles growing. At the back of the room, Ryan watched through the glass window the woman who had changed his world, now changing others without even trying. When she closed the book, a little boy raised his hand. "Miss Aaliyah, did you really save somebody?" The room went still. Aaliyah smiled softly. "I think sometimes we all save someone just by not turning away." Applause broke out. Small hands clapping, laughter filling the air. A local reporter snapped a photo for the school's newsletter. By nightfall, that photo spread across the internet. Black heroine who saved billionaire's daughter reads to kids about snow and hope. Back home, Ryan printed the article and framed it quietly in his office. That evening, Aaliyah and Ella sat by the fireplace in the guest house. Ella leaned against her shoulder, eyelids heavy. "You made winter not scary anymore," she murmured. Aaliyah brushed her hair gently. "And you made it beautiful again." Outside, the last snow of the season began to fall. Soft, slow, forgiving. The weeks rolled by gently, and spring sunlight began to tease the edges of the snow. Inside the Reynolds mansion, warmth filled every corner. Not from heaters or chandeliers, but from laughter. Aaliyah sat beside the fireplace with Ella curled up in her lap, her tiny fingers tracing the lines of a new picture book. Ryan walked in with 3 mugs of hot cocoa, setting one in front of each of them. "Extra marshmallows as ordered," he said with a small grin. Ella giggled. "You listened to her more than the doctors." "That's because she saved my best patient," he replied, glancing at Aaliyah with quiet gratitude. Aaliyah smiled. "You're learning, Mr. Reynolds. Real medicine starts with the heart." They all laughed softly, the fire crackling like a lullaby. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky. Light, harmless, beautiful. Ella looked up. "Aaliyah, are you staying forever?" The question caught her off guard. She looked at Ryan, then back at the child's innocent face. "I don't know about forever," Aaliyah said softly, "but for as long as the world needs warmth, I'll be here." Ella nodded sleepily, resting her head against her. "Then the world's lucky." Ryan stood quietly, watching them both. The woman who had turned his guilt into grace, and the daughter who now smiled without fear. He whispered, almost to himself, "So am I?" For a long moment, none of them spoke. The fire danced, the snow fell, and time seemed to stop. 3 souls bound by a storm that had once tried to break them. Aaliyah looked toward the window where the snow melted against the glass, white and black flakes swirling together before disappearing into warmth. "Funny," she murmured. "The snow used to scare me." Ryan smiled faintly. "Now it reminds me of second chances." She reached for Ella's tiny hand, holding it between her palms. "That's what we all needed, didn't we?" He nodded, and somehow the storm gave it to us. Outside, the night sky shimmered with quiet peace. No chaos, no fear, just forgiveness drifting down like snow. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.